Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into James Clear's incredible book, Atomic Habits. We're going to break down how the smallest, tiniest changes can, believe it or not, lead to absolutely life-altering results.
So let's start with a story about a team that was, well, the definition of mediocre. For almost 100 years, British professional cycling was basically a joke. I mean, think about it, just one single gold medal since 1908. And in the entire 110-year history of the Tour de France, not a single British winner. It got so bad that the big fancy bike companies literally refused to sell them their bikes. Yeah, they were afraid it would actually hurt their brand if other pros saw the Brits using their gear. That's how far they'd fallen.
And yet, somehow, in just a few short years, this same team completely transformed. They became one of the most dominant forces in the history of the sport. So you gotta ask, right? How on earth did they do it? Well, their secret was this really simple but profound philosophy. And the cool thing is, once you understand it, you can start applying that very same logic to your own life.
Okay, so the big shift started back in 2003. It all came down to one key hire, a new performance director named Dave Brailsford. Now, he didn't show up with some secret fancy training plan or a radical new bike. Nope. Instead, he brought on a strategy with a kind of nerdy name, the aggregation of marginal gains.
And let me tell you, the results were wow. They were fast and they were dramatic. Just 5 years after Brailsford started, they went from being a laughingstock to winning 60% of the cycling gold medals at the Beijing Olympics. 60%. A few years after that, they're setting world records left and right. And then, get this, between 2012 and 2017, they win 5 Tour de France titles. This wasn't just a little improvement, this was total, absolute domination.
So what was this philosophy? It was all about finding a tiny 1% improvement in absolutely everything. I mean everything. You know, they started with the obvious stuff, right? Redesigning the bike seats to be more comfortable, things like that. But then they went way further. They tested different massage gels to find the one that helped muscles recover fastest. They actually hired a surgeon to teach the riders the perfect way to wash their hands so they wouldn't get sick. They even painted the inside of their team truck white just so they could spot tiny bits of dust that might mess with the bike mechanics. No detail was too small.
And this whole story, it's just a perfect illustration of the big idea in Atomic Habits. That these tiny, almost insignificant improvements, when you add them up over time, lead to truly astounding results.
Think about it, a 1% improvement.
You can't even see it, right? You go to the gym one time, you don't suddenly have a six-pack. You save a couple of bucks, you're not a millionaire. In that moment, it feels like nothing. It feels totally insignificant. But, as we're about to see, that tiny 1% can be the most powerful force for change there is, especially over the long run. So, let's look at the actual math here, because it's kind of mind-blowing. If you get just 1% worse each day for a year, you basically end up at 0. Your skill is gone. But if you get 1% better each day, by the end of the year, you'll be nearly 38 times better than when you started. That's the power of this. It's the core idea of the book. Habits are basically the compound interest of self-improvement.
But here's the catch, and it's a big one. Progress is almost never a straight line. So often you put in all this work and it feels like nothing is happening. James Clear has a great name for this. He calls it the plateau of latent potential. He uses this fantastic analogy of an ice cube. Imagine an ice cube in a room that's, say, 25 degrees. You start slowly heating the room. 26 degrees, 27, 30, 31, and the whole time, what's the ice cube doing? Nothing. It's just sitting there. But then you hit 32 degrees and bam, a massive change is unlocked. All that work, all that energy you put in, it wasn't wasted. It was just being stored up. And this right here is why so many of us give up on new habits. We expect to see progress right away, but the biggest breakthroughs are hiding just on the other side of that plateau.
It's kind of like that famous story about the stonecutter. He hammers away at a rock 100 times and not a single crack appears. But then, on the 101st blow, it splits in two. Now, was it that last hit that did all the work? Of course not. It was all the hits that came before it. It's the same for you. Your breakthrough moments, they're the result of all those times you showed up and put in the work, especially when it felt like it wasn't making a difference.
Okay, so this whole idea of compounding progress, it leads us to something, well, something pretty counterintuitive. It's a powerful insight, but it might sound a little weird at first. If you really want to get better results, you might actually need to forget about your goals.
So what on earth does that mean? Well, what's the difference between goals and systems? A goal is the result you're after. You want to win the championship. You want to write a book. A system, on the other hand, is the process that leads to those results. It's your workout routine, your daily writing schedule.
See, goals are great for setting a direction, but it's the systems that actually get you there.
And here's why focusing only on goals can be a real trap. First off, winners and losers, they have the exact same goals. Every athlete in the Olympics wants the gold medal, right? So the goal itself clearly isn't what separates them. Second, when you achieve a goal, it's just a momentary change. You finally clean your messy room? Great. But if you don't fix the sloppy habits that made it messy, guess what? It's going to be a disaster again next week. Plus, goals can mess with your happiness and create this yo-yo effect, where all your motivation vanishes the second you cross the finish line.
The legendary football coach Bill Walsh, he got this completely. He had this saying, the score takes care of itself. He knew that if his team just focused on the system, on executing perfectly in practice every single day, then the scoreboard on game day would work out just fine. And that's the big takeaway here. You don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems.
But wait, there's actually a layer that's even deeper than your goals and your systems. The most powerful, most lasting way to change, it's not about what you do. It's about who you believe you are.
James Clear explains this using a simple metaphor, an onion. Think about 3 layers. On the outside, you have your outcomes. That's what you get, the result, like losing weight. The next layer in is your process. That's what you do, the habits, like going to the gym. But right there in the center, the deepest layer is your identity. That's what you believe about yourself. And real lasting change doesn't happen from the outside in. It happens from the inside out. It starts with your identity.
Okay, here's a perfect example of this in action. Imagine 2 people who are trying to quit smoking. Someone offers them a cigarette. The first person says, "No thanks, I'm trying to quit." What are they really saying? They're saying they're still a smoker, but they're trying not to be. Their identity hasn't changed. Now, the second person says, "No thanks, I'm not a smoker." Whoa, see the difference? It's a tiny change in words, but it signals a massive shift in identity. That person has already become someone new.
And that is the key to everything. The real goal is never just about the outcome. It's about becoming someone different. Your goal isn't just to run a marathon. It's to become a runner. The goal isn't to write a book. It's to become a writer. Because when a habit becomes a part of who you are, a part of your identity, well, that's the most powerful motivation you could ever ask for.
So, okay, if identity is the most important thing, how in the world do you build a new one? Well, the answer, maybe a little surprisingly, brings us full circle. It comes right back to those tiny, atomic habits we started with. And that's exactly what an atomic habit is. The name is perfect, right? Like an atom, it's a tiny, fundamental building block. Each one of these little habits is a component in a much larger system. A system that doesn't just produce incredible results, but one that actually forges your new identity.
This leads to one of my favorite ideas in the whole book. Every action you take is a vote for the type of person you want to become. Think about that. You're not born with a fixed identity, you build it. So every time you perform one of those tiny habits, you write just 1 page, you do 5 push-ups, you meditate for 1 single minute, you are casting a vote. You're giving yourself a little piece of evidence that says, hey, I am a writer, or I am an athletic person. You are literally becoming that person one small action at a time.
And that's really what it all comes down to. Building better habits. It's not about some life hack to be more productive. It's about the process of becoming someone new. Your habits are the pathway to shaping your deepest beliefs about who you are. Because, quite literally, you become what you do. So the final question I'll leave you with is a simple one. With every small choice you make today, who are you voting to be?